Hey, welcome to Guitar Knobs, the guitars, gear, noise, and nonsense podcast, hosted today by these knobs.
Tony Dudzik, Pick Guardian.
Jared Brandon down in Nashville.
Hey, everybody, it's me, Todd Novak. Welcome to the Guitar Knobs podcast. We're thrilled to death that you're listening to our show.
As always.
That's right. I think this might be the last one of the, well, actually, this will go into the new year, I think.
No.
No, it won't. It might. If it is, hooray. If it's not, oh, well. How about that?
It's either first or last.
It is either first or last. That is correct. We are really excited because tonight we have a very famous Texan who is building guitars. Texan, what is your name? Who are you?
My name is Dean Gordon, and I'm from Dean Gordon Guitars. Definitely not Texan. I like to drink cups of coffee and take the subway. From New York, but it's I don't live in New York anymore, so you can call me whatever you want to call me.
Yeah,
Floridian. Floridian, right?
I am now in Miami, Florida. Yes.
Yes.
Nothing wrong with that.
Not at all.
It's a lot warmer right now. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you are not familiar with Dean Gordon Guitars, boy, oh boy, do we have a treat for your eyes and ears if you go down the path even further.
Or fingertips.
Dean, where can people go see your work?
So obviously I have my website, www.deangordonguitars.com. But then I have also, where I blog more extensively is on my Instagram page, which is Dean Gordon Guitars. And then I have my Facebook page, which is also Dean Gordon Guitars. I have all the albums on my Facebook page of all of my different works. Instagram is a little more hands-on, a little more of my day-to-day. So, pick your poison.
Perfect. All right. We are going to get into what he does. And what he does is something that pretty much, you are a singular vision of design in the guitar world when it comes to your guitars. I think it's fair to say.
There aren't many guys that have something as kind of, modern or extreme or whatever word you want to use to describe my guitars. There's a couple of builders, one of them is Uli Teufel out in over in Europe. He has similarly wacky guitars, and I don't say wacky in a bad way. But I still feel like we're at different levels. His price range is like double that of mine, so it's still a bit of a big cut off of a different block. He gets really into the types of hand milling things and the screws, and not that I don't get into my details, but it's. All the respect to him, it's just very different vibe still is what I'm trying to say. There's not many like me where I try to blend a lot of the classic and what people like about the guitars that they've been playing over the decades. I try to take that and repackage it into something a little new, a little more fresh, a little more ergonomic, just something different.
Yeah. I think the closest we would have if we're like, hey, here's a bunch of fruit, and then there's like, oh, look at this fruit basket over here. If you were in that basket, I think we would maybe of the builders that we've had on, probably the closest would be Metric out of
Millimetric.
Millimetric. Yeah. He's his stuff's like super.
And even that is like, we're not even close.
Oh,
no. And I don't say that as a comparison. I'm just saying, like, just different, completely different. Like, he's got this kind of like future retro Art Deco-y, very, old school looking vibe. He does like a really good blend of a couple of different worlds. I feel like it's just such a different, still completely different.
Yes, they're so different. That's why that's why they're in the same basket.
Yes.
Anyways, well, you all, I'm sure, are looking at it by now going, yeah, we see. And we're going to find out all about what spurs this vision on from Dean. We're going to start out really quick with some of our normal shenanigans. We've got
announcements.
Announcement.
Yes.
We have we have locally in Ohio. We've got a guitar show coming up
Yeah.
on January 7th. I'm very excited about. I think I might actually bring the Concorde out there.
That'd be
And
worth
then, see if
seeing if you get
anybody bites.
Yeah, put that next to the tire mounted on a block so people can kick it.
Yeah. Yes. I have a. Well, golly, what year did we say that was? 70.
It's the early 70s.
70 something. Sound City Concorde Blonde 212 combo with it's all original.
Yeah.
So
I mean, a dealer might pick that up.
yeah, I mean, if you see one of these ever or pictures of it, I think you'll be shocked. So anyhow, there I'm priming the pump for. So we got that. We also have a little bit more serious note.
Yes.
We mentioned in the last episode, and we probably will for a few more.
Let's do it.
We have a friend of the podcast, a supporter of the podcast, and even a bigger personality out in the guitar community via 37 Effects, Doug Christ. Who many of you know and who have heard on the show. His son is in some health trouble and is getting a heart transplant. I think I'm trying to remember where he is in the process right now, but regardless, it is a long process because it isn't just getting it. It is the months of rehabilitation and medication and all those things. And it is aside from, just having to go through that from an emotional burden for all the entire family, it is a huge financial burden that most people are never prepared for. So they've set up a GoFundMe, and we are asking you to consider checking out Finding a New Heart for Tim Christ. Finding a New Heart for Tim Christ. If you just type in Christ, Chrisist, sort of like the more famous one,
Yes.
you should find it. It would be a great help to him and his family, and they are huge supporters of the guitar community. So we send our support out to Doug and his family, and for Tim on a speedy recovery as he goes through this process. Now, onward, we are going to go. This week, what's going on in our music worlds this week? We're going to start off with the befuddled-looking Tanya Bolonsky sitting across from me. What's going on, Tanya?
Well, our good friend,
Yes.
Mark Chatfield from our last episode.
Mark Chatfield.
So Mark was at my shop not too long ago.
Yes.
And I was
on the last episode.
Yes, he was on the last episode.
I missed it. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Maybe he'll come back.
He had a lot to say, I'm sure.
Probably will.
We could talk about other stuff.
Yeah.
But anyhow, he came down to my shop, and Todd had given me a Jensen Alnico 12-inch speaker, and I didn't have a box for it.
Because Tony, you do so much for the show, and I just wanted to do something nice.
Well, that was very nice of you to
Yes.
do, and I do greatly appreciate that. But anyhow, I didn't have a box, and I asked Mark, and I said, "Hey, do you have any empty 112s?" And he said, "No." He said, "But I've got this Trainer amplifier that I harvested somebody put a UK greenback in it that I wanted, and the thing's just sitting in my garage. Do you want it?" I said, yeah.
Yeah.
So he brought that along the evening of our last episode, and I had a chance to put that said 12-inch speaker into it.
Mm-hmm.
And what I didn't realize, a number of things. So what he gave me was this Trainer YCV40. Now, it's one of the newer trainers that Yorkville Sound, but it is made in Canada by Happy Canadians.
Okay.
Even more impressive, when I first looked at it, I saw two power tubes, and I said, "Oh, it must have like a, solid state pre and tube out." Well, you have to take this little cover off, and there are 3 AX7s inside. So this is a full-blown tube amplifier, about a 40 watter, and
It kind of looks like a piece of luggage.
Well, yeah, sort of. Yeah, it's got that look.
Like oxblood,
Yeah.
Tolex leather stuff.
Yeah, and then with a wheat grill cloth.
Yeah.
And
Wheat.
a wheat. So I popped the speaker in, and my God, this thing sounds incredible. It really does. I mean,
what does that mean? Incredible.
it's got the
Is
the
it
amp.
more incredible than your hand-wired AC 15?
I wouldn't go that far.
Okay.
But it's more versatile. I will tell you this, because it is set up that it has essentially what I would call 3 channels. It's got a clean side, and then it's got a dirty side, and then there's a boost. So it's a second gain stage. And all 3 settings sound fantastic. I mean, they really do. And the breakup is just really nice with that Elnico speaker. So I'm really happy about that. I found a foot switch for it for $20 today, so I'm even happier about that. And the only thing we have to check out, the reverb is not working, but I don't use a lot of reverb, so I'm not overly concerned about that.
Fix it.
But yeah, I talked to Rob today, Rob Chaffee, and
Is it a tank?
yeah, it is a tank reverb, yes.
Oh, you can fix it easy.
Yeah. So he said, well, just check see if something is shorted out, blah, blah, blah.
Spring-a-ling.
Yeah. And so, but thanks again, Mark. I sent him a nice note today thanking him for being on the podcast and dropping off this lovely amplifier.
Yeah.
So
Super cool.
Mark has been a great client. He was a great client of mine for a long time too. When I was running Brandon Wound, and he always sent the best stuff for me to fix for him.
Yeah. Well, and he
He
uses Brandon Wound pickups in pretty much all of his guitars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one of these amps on Reverb right now for a redunculous price of $400.
Yeah.
Compared to the next one, which is $700. So you might, if you're interested,
Giddy
up.
Like I said, what impressed me, it's heavy. I will tell you that. Especially now with a speaker in it.
Yeah.
It weighs a lot. But I didn't realize that they were made in Canada. And
there you go.
So that's kind of
That's
a cool
something.
thing with these days where everything's made in overseas in China or Indonesia or anything like that.
Yeah.
This is the next best thing to America.
You don't hear the term Indochina too much.
No, they broke away.
Yeah.
They
Hey,
split.
you guys have maple syrup.
That's true. Actually, and pedals. There's so many pedal builders in Canada. It's crazy.
And tour gear design
And
patch
tour gear design,
cables.
we'll get
That's
to,
right.
which we'll get to.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Dean, what is going on in your musical this week that maybe isn't solely based on the things we're going to interview about? Anything? New albums you may be listening to or something?
Oh, music. I can't. It's tough to say. Again, I might seem a little boring and dry here, but I've just been so busy before the holidays and prepping for the NAMM show that I have just not had anything music. Yeah, I guess my brother got us tickets to see Tool
Oh, there you go.
just before the NAMM show.
Cool.
In here in Florida, that's awesome. I'd never seen them, and while I'm not like the most. I'm not the biggest Tool fan. I like heavy rock and metal a lot. Tool isn't my thing, but still going to see them is very special. I know that they're a great live band. That's all musically. Again, I've been hammered really honestly before the holiday here.
That's fair. Did you spring on any new tools or anything that to get you into the season?
Recently I've been kind of just doing some small little upgrades to my spray booth and kind of just new spray guns, new compressors, all kinds of stuff like that. And just kind of setting it up for like the next wave of things that I'm going to be passing through the shop. And the fact that I've just been slowly and more progressively getting busier and busier, so I've kind of increasing the capacity of that spray booth, areas where I can hang things to dry and mix paints and prep things. That booth needed an upgrade sorely, so I've thrown down a few $100 upgrading that booth the last few days here.
Nice.
Simple.
Jared, about yourself.
Yeah. So,
All right.
no. So that's it.
We broke him.
So after So my wife will take a shower and then put, when your wives take a shower and then they put the towel around their head like a beehive. I call my wife Beehive Bickle, and I've been calling her that ever since when she has the towel on her head.
That must be a Canadian insult. Are you from Canada too?
No,
no, it's not.
Well, we were at this party last night, the Christmas party, and there's an artist
at the Gibson Christmas party. Is that one?
At the Gibson, the Gibson Garage, and there's an artist that works for Adam Jones of Tool, or inspired by or something, and we've done some Epiphones, and there's a drawing of a girl with an actual like beehive nest on her head. So that was very satisfying to show my wife that drawing on the back of the car of the guitar at the party. And she just looked at me and shook her head. But it was pretty funny.
I think anybody with a lady in their life knows the look of disapproval all too well.
That must have been a fun party at the old Gibson Garage there, Jared.
It was a lot of fun, man.
How was the food?
It was let me tell you a little story about that. So they didn't, they had a very nice, fancy meat and cheese and some really nice fruit. It was really well put together.
We'd call it heavy hors d'oeuvres.
Yes.
Heavy hors d'oeuvres. And so I had 4 glasses of wine.
Ooh. Oh.
And so I partook into the hors d'oeuvres a little bit. And I grabbed a piece of cheese that still had the foil on it. And I didn't realize I was eating foil until I was almost done.
Oh, that's a horrible feeling. Do you have like fillings in your teeth that when it touched it, it like?
Yeah, but like I said, I had like 4 glasses of wine, so I wasn't really feeling it. And it was a great party.
Dean, Jared is 6'8", 375.
I grow every time.
Yes,
he says how big
I am the opposite of you. I'm 5'5", 150 pounds.
Now, Jared, when you were making your way towards the table, was there anything over the intercom that says, "Jared Brandon, you have a call in the front lobby"? No.
Godzilla!
Somebody was sleeping on the job then. Anyways,
it was. They put on a really good party. It was fun.
Cool. I would imagine they would.
Yeah, it was entertaining. It had live music and all that good stuff. So
hey, who could ask for anything more? Mm-hmm. How about you, Todd?
Well, there was a slumber party that happened.
Oh,
and
was that after the last episode?
It wasn't. It's all happened in the same week. Anyways, one of my daughters said, "Hey, I'm having a whole bunch of people sleeping over," and I'm like, "Okay." I was displaced.
Once again,
because my basement that's where I live.
Temporarily dehomed.
I was dehomed big time, and the rest of our house isn't set up for Todd to like hang out in.
No.
So I was just like, geez, what am I gonna? It was just kind of like, what am I gonna do? And I do have a couple of my other guitars and basses up in my wife's office, which is also where the girls practice their viola and clarinets and all that stuff. And I'm like, I'm just going to go in there. And I remembered that I brought up the Spark 40.
Oh, yes.
For my daughter to be able to practice for jazz band, for bass. And I was like, I'm going to sit in here and play bass. And I recently had scored that Squire 70s Vibe Jazz. And I really like the way it plays. Strap that on, put some Jane's Addiction on through the because it'll play your Spotify tunes at the same time. Mm-hmm. And I played in there for like an hour and a half.
You probably sounded just like the record.
I do. It's amazing. Eric Avery and I can hang out and play. I mean, no problem.
Nice. Well, that's cool.
Anyways,
if he can keep up with you,
yes, exactly. It was just fun, and I forgot myself completely, and then it was like time to go to sleep. So I was like, hey, this worked out great.
I'm surprised you didn't grab an acoustic and try to charm the youngins with some nice numbers.
They would not be charmed by my acoustic numbers. I'm not. I'm except for what I was doing with the Cash Tribute thing. You don't want to hear me on acoustic.
Oh, I think I do. I'm going to drag you to an open
yes.
stage.
So speaking of acoustic guitars, Tony,
Yes.
what goes with acoustic guitars?
Well, not normally, but I think you could probably work out a way to put some Tour Gear Design patch cables.
It has nothing to do with acoustic guitars. It's just a funny segue.
Oh.
Yes. So anyways, Tour Gear Designs. Tell them about it.
Well, these are special patch cables from our friends up in Canada. And they use a very flat cable with very teeny tiny ends. So you can literally put an extra pedal, maybe 2 pedals on your pedal board just by using these cables, because they take up probably half the space of a traditional pancake cable.
And go from 3-inch size all the way up to 72-inch size.
We did discover that.
That is amazing.
That's a long patch cable.
That is a long patch cable, but sometimes you need that kind of thing, especially if you have a really big board.
And you go to their website and you see all this stuff that you absolutely have to have, and you load up your cart, and you load up your cart, and you load up your cart. And at the end, there's a space that says coupon code. And if you put in the guitar knobs, all lowercase, all one word, you're going to save an extra 15%. That's 15% off an already reasonably priced product.
Amazing.
And you know what? Once you see that, you're going to probably go back and load some more stuff up in your cart.
Anyways, go and do that. And meanwhile, we want to thank Tour Gear Designs for sponsoring what is typically next, the 4 on the floor. But in this case, we have so much to talk to Dean about as far as guitars go. And he said, hey, look, I'm really not a pedal guy. That's okay.
That's all right.
We can forego that this time, and we'll get on with the show. So hopefully by now, many of you have gone and checked out Dean Gordon Guitars, and you'll probably say, wait a minute, I've seen that before. In various forms, especially on Instagram, or maybe if you've been out at NAMM and been to the boutique area, those are, standalone, unique guitars. So, Dean, where should we start with? There's so many places to go with this. We want to talk all about the guitars, but I think understanding maybe the road to how you arrived at this design would be helpful to get a grasp of.
Sure, yeah. So, I get this. This is actually one of the more common questions that a lot of people ask me, especially if I'm at a show or whatever it'd be, comments online. Hey, like, how'd you come up with this? Years ago, when I was 14, 15 years old, and I started playing guitar, and I got through the tinkering phase, and I had built my first parts guitar, and I kind of got into, more into learning about luthiery. I said to myself, I'm going to, make my own guitar. And I had been sketching all different designs. And what I noticed was I would come up with the design, and most of them were around Telecasters, because I'm a Tele guy. And basically I would do that, and I'd go online and I would find some guitar builder somewhere doing an offshoot of the Telecaster, or and then hey, let me draw a Super Strat or a Strat, and I'd find some guy doing exactly that, because there's a million different versions of Telecasters today and a million different versions of Stratocasters. And then one day, I kind of was just playing around with the lower horn area of the Telecaster design, sketching, and I kind of just stopped halfway, and I had the design of what I now call my Mirrors model, or a very rough sketch of it. And I said, hey, that's actually kind of cool. If we were to cut away a lot of that horn and kind of just have something in place that is much thinner and allow for the access. And that's how I arrived to the first design. And, at first in my head, I was thinking that lower horn piece would be made out of wood. I quickly realized it should be made out of metal because it's a tougher material. And so on from there. That's the root short version of how I came up with the design, and it's the core of it. It was essentially, I didn't want to make, as I realized so many people are doing more of the traditional designs, I got bored of it. I didn't want to make or do something that everyone else is doing. It bored me at a young age. And I was going to an art high school in New York City. I was going to the High School of Art and Design. I was gearing up to go to a college for packaging design and graphic design and all that. And, so creativity was all over my school, and the forward thinking design. And, doing the same old always bored me. So that's kind of how I arrived to where I am today and the core around my design.
Thank you for that backstory. I think that adequately gets us to where we are, with the exception of. Well, first, wait. I'll go back to the actual story that you just finished, which was when you did arrive at this. Did you give yourself, I guess, was there any part of you that said, I can't do this, or I shouldn't do this, or this is guitar blasphemy, or is this just gonna fly? Did you have to give yourself like permission in any way?
There's always that feeling, and that I don't know if the word is trepidation, maybe in your head about like, hey, like, can I step forward with this design? Is there something that like I should spend my time and like, I'm a young kid, so should I spend my summer saving up money for parts to make something that might just be horrible? And at the time when I came up with these, I had an apprenticeship with Sadowski guitars. And at the same exact time as that, I had an apprenticeship with Victor Baker guitars.
Wow.
So he's a well-known archtop maker now in San Diego, and Roger Sadowski is a legend in the business out of New York. At the time, Victor Baker was in New York, and I had the apprenticeships, and I remember showing Victor Baker, and Victor was like, yeah, man, that would be like a huge pain in the ass to make that. And Roger kind of gave me the same look, and he was like, "Oh, okay, like yeah, you could do that. Like, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to do that."
Is this pre-CNC, by the way? Like when everybody kind of jumped on CNC?
So this was for me. Obviously, I didn't have a CNC machine. Victor Baker was running a CNC machine.
Okay.
And Roger Sadowski, at the time they weren't making anything in the shop. They would do a lot of work in the shop, like the fretwork and all that, but everything was made out of the house and brought to them. So at Rogers, it was more like, I think he was thinking logistically, like, okay, like you got to have someone do this. You don't have a CNC mill. It was such the carves and everything. It was a very complex design, and he was like, doing this by hand will be nuts. And Victor Baker was looking at the lower horn portion and going like, how are you going to do that? And I was like, oh, maybe aluminum or metal. And he was just like, why don't you just make something a little more normal? Like, and he didn't say it negatively. He was just thinking like a business guy was. He was like, what the hell? Like, why would you want to make this? Like, I was like, man, like, I can't, I'm going to do this. And I did it. And I actually kind of like really became very stubborn at a young age. I was arguing with people online stupidly. Like, I've grown out of this phase. Because I would post pictures of my first few projects online, and people would come at me. I've been told to kill myself. I've been called an idiot.
Wow.
The term. I have a folder on my computer somewhere full of screenshots of the messages and comments that I get. Really crazy stuff. Now, today that just makes me laugh. Like, I don't care. Like, okay, great. Like, this guy could be a loser who's talking to me, so I'm not going to take it to heart.
It probably is.
It sounds like
yeah.
That would be, instead of like live, laugh, love, you could have an entire wall just with a vinyl of all the insults.
Yeah.
to spur you on.
Screw these people. It was tough, and at first, but I went through. I made the first Mirrors model, and then I made the second one. And at the time, just after the apprenticeships ended, and I got into FIT for graphic design, I got a job at Chelsea Guitars in New York City as a tech. And the Chelsea Guitars, legendary store in the Chelsea Hotel, run by and owned by Dan Courtenay, and the manager there, Matt, and the other guy, Kobe. I was working in that store. Dan saw my first design. I showed him pictures, and Dan just pulled me behind the bench and was like, here, I want you to work here. You'll do some store setups, and we'll see how you do. And I made the second one, and a few months later, Keith Urban came in. And at that same time, and the reason Keith Urban was in the city was they were doing the 2012 or 13, I'm forgetting the year, Crossroads Guitar Festival. And Dan had a Dumble amplifier in the store. Dumble Overdrive Special, which is, again, a legendary amp. I'm sure you guys might have heard of those.
Yeah.
Just maybe. And Keith came in and was buying the amp, and he saw the guitar, and he bought my second guitar ever made.
Wow.
Yeah. So that, long story long, is what sealed in my head, okay, I have something with this design. If Keith Urban was like, this is a cool kid, this is a kid with something, and bought it right there, I felt in my heart that this is something that I have to do, and I'm onto something. And that has been a big source of motivation for me to keep going and get to where I am today. 11 years later now.
Mm-hmm.
And that is like the core of what cemented the idea that I got to go ahead with this crazy design.
That's awesome, man. That's a great story, and it's exactly the answer I was hoping to get. Besides, yep.
Well, look, I mean, it's all downhill. It's all downhill from here after Keith Urban. So it's.
Let's talk about some of your musical influence. I mean, I have to think that to some degree, what you're doing, had to have been influenced in some other way besides, oh, this is kind of a cool accidental design I got. Where were you musically in the years preceding this?
Okay, so one of the things that got me into making guitar, not just making, but working on guitars in general, was at the time in my teeny bopper years, I was very much so into the band Muse. At this point, Muse is like the biggest rock band on earth. They're huge. I'm sure you guys have also heard of Muse.
Yep.
Matt Bellamy of Muse has these very custom guitars made by a wonderful luthier in England, Hugh Manson. Of Manson guitars, and he has his own design. And I remember seeing an interview with Matt, and Matt said, I wanted my own design because I don't want something that has ghosts of other players on it. So Matt,
that's interesting.
Yeah, and I thought that was a really eloquent way to put it. Like, he didn't want to pick up a Les Paul or a Strat because, like, what do you think of all these other people when you see a Les Paul? You think of Jimmy Page, you think of Slash or whoever. If you pick up a Strat, you think of Jimi Hendrix or Eric Clapton.
Right.
And, I mean, it's boring at this point. We've seen everybody's grandmother has a Strat and a Les Paul. So, not that they're not good guitars, but that, I feel, was where he was coming from. It has his own design, and it, going back to the question you were asking, like, that was a big influence musically, his music. And, I was into the music before I started working on the guitars, but then hearing that guitar cue from him as I was starting to learn and do my apprenticeships, that like cemented my love for the band. Now, I don't listen to them as much today because it's gotten very like electronic and a little bit away from what I do listen to. Today I listen to much, much heavier stuff. I listen to a band called the Bad Omens, Deftones. I listen to Polyphia. I listen to all these very modern prog metal, all the different genres and subgenres around that is where I'm at. And, at first I wasn't so much like that, but my guitars tend to lean towards that crowd, that style of music, at least the players that are picking my guitars up and buying them. So I've naturally have kind of made friends with a lot of people and talking music, and that's kind of how I've gotten into it musically. That's where the influence, my musical influence at least, is when it applies to my work.
Nice. Who are, I guess maybe let's talk about your audience really quick, because these are incredibly unique. These are statement guitars, but
right.
They're clearly engineered in a way that, there are statement guitars, and then there are like, oh, this is a statement guitar for like a surgeon.
Yeah, so a lot of people, maybe even Dan at Chelsea Guitars, who's like a second father to me, would refer to my guitars before he knew I was making them as doctor guitars or lawyer guitars, because they're very fancy and they're not super cheap, and they're like one of a kind boutique custom thing. My clients, it's a really mixed group of people. I've had so many different walks of life come to me and order guitars. I've had studio guys order them. I've had guys that are, yes, very much so, just the classic, like, oh yeah, I listen to AC/DC and Led Zeppelin, like that kind of guy.
Uh-huh.
And then I have like the ultra technical guitar players that, for instance, their biggest inspiration would be like Tosin Abasi or something like that. And like, it's a wide variety of people from different walks of life, but it's mostly the guy that is, again, like the Tosin Abasi type, the more of the metal type of guy. Again, I think it's because purely it's a very modern guitar.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, a lot of the comments that I see online were going back, hey, kill yourself. Those guitars are crazy. This guy's an idiot, yada, yada, for making these. A lot of those guys are the traditionalists that come at me. With any kind of like negativity, doing the NAMM show, you have guys walking past my table and they won't even walk up to my table. They'll be like, oh, like you see the guys making like dirty faces as they're walking by, and I don't take it it out of malice, but it's just like, oh, like it's so different that it gives a lot of people the ick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and to clarify, when I said surgeon, I literally didn't mean like lawyer or doctor. I meant like musical surgeon, like somebody who's going to be incredibly adept.
I hope you understand where I was coming from.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. But I mean, you probably got that too. So I think
yes,
that's. When you go through, NAMM is a great example of this because you can walk through, and I know without saying, we don't have to necessarily say, but there's like one or two rows where you're like, oh my God, what are these people doing? Right? And it's not the boutique ones. It's just the import. We'll just say they're the import weird, guitars.
Yeah.
Like this guitar will change color whenever it's like, what? Now,
I'm not naming names, but I'm already thinking of a few guys.
The banjo harp guitar.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, great people, really passionate people, but there's definitely a lot of like, what the hell?
Yeah. But these, like, the difference is there is, oh, look at this. This is different for the sake of being different. And there's another one where it's like, well, this is somebody's got a vision here. And not only do they have a vision, but you can tell. You don't have to know much about guitars. You can look at this and say, okay, that is a highly engineered guitar.
Right.
Like there's nothing nonsense about this.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely thought that went into every line and to every curve and the way things are placed on my guitars. I mean, in this business, it's so competitive that I feel like if you're going to sit down and already lay these things out and put the effort into making them, why not do it in a way where you put a little extra time into thinking about where every line is and where every cut is and where every carve is?
Yeah.
Because like, what's the point otherwise? Like, why bother?
Yeah.
And so for my work, obviously, I do apply that engineered thought to the design, and I love to say to people that, like, because a lot of people always say to me, like, is it different just for being different sake? I'm not going to sit here and say I make the best guitar in the world. I'm not going to sit here and say it's going to revolutionize guitars. I'm not trying to do that. Honestly, I think there's only so much you could do with the electric guitar before it's just not a guitar. Like, it's a bridge, it's some tuners, it's pickups. You know what I mean? Like, how different can you really make it before it's no longer the instrument that is intended?
Yeah.
So to me, I think, the cutaway, where your hand can get in there. I like to say it's like 5 or 10% better in this area, 5 or 10% better in that area. My guitars are generally lighter. My guitars, generally, the access is easier. They balance. Like, so there are areas where, like, say you're comparing cars. And I'm not saying my car is a Ferrari. My guitar is a Ferrari, but let's just say my guitar in this instance is a Ferrari.
Let me say that for you, actually, so that I get you off the hook. In a world of muscle cars, this is a supercar.
Yeah,
more closely aligned with the supercar. Now, whether that means something that is like completely outlandish, or it's just. No, this is highly engineered and for a specific kind of audience. What you said about Ferrari is like, if you're scrolling through these pictures, you'd be hard pressed not to say, man, I hope this guy gives one of these, sends one of these to Ferrari and have them put a horse on it or something.
Oh, that.
Hey, I made one inspired by Ferrari a while back, and I emailed them with it, and they never responded. I did the same with Rolls-Royce and Aston Martin, and they never responded.
Wow.
And then last year's NAMM show, I did one inspired by McLaren, and I emailed McLaren, and they actually posted a whole article on me on their press release website.
Fantastic.
So McLaren, shout out to McLaren. I'm sure hopefully someone's listening, but shout out to them for actually seeing that and doing something cool, unlike all the other companies. But I understand, obviously, I'm just poking fun. But yeah, again, if it's a muscle car and mine is a supercar, both of them still go from A to B, is what I was getting at. Mine, being the supercar might just be a little faster and a little lighter weight. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm getting at. I like my guitars and the shape to really speak for themselves, and for it to be a breath of fresh air without people going, that's too much for me. Like, one guitar maker that I feel, or company that I feel, has changed things in terms of as much as people like what they think of guitar, Strandberg guitars. They make the headless guitar with those trapezoidal necks, but that starts to get different enough that people shy away from it. I didn't want that to really occur as much with my
Parker,
guitars.
it comes to mind too in that
Parker Fly.
frame, yeah.
Now I get the Parker comparison more than any other comparison for my guitars, and Ken is actually my biggest Luthiery inspiration. So the Parker Fly is to me an incredible instrument and way ahead of its time.
They're
Yeah.
feathers.
Yeah. And even compared to mine, just like a night and day difference. They were so far ahead of their time. That's all I can say. It's really a shame that the company's not around, because I think today they would have a much bigger audience with the way music is going in the guitar world.
Probably fair. So let's talk about the actual bits and bobs of the guitar for a little bit.
Sure.
You seem to have. Let's talk about your hardware. Do you have that? Is some of that custom? Is that bespoke hardware, or is it? Where do you go with that?
So the lower horn is bespoke to me. I have it. I used to make them all in my shop, but then I was destroying my tools, forming aluminum. So I have them done for me now, and it's very custom. But the rest of the hardware, I use a few different companies, Schaller, Hipshot, to name a few. And I like to use simple stuff. I'm not a big guy with complex hardware. Like if you threw me a crazy tremolo or like an Evertune bridge or something like that, I don't love that too much. I prefer more simple, like the standard Hipshot hardtail or the Schaller or the Honest bridge that they make. Honest hardtail is the way I go, just for tuning, for comfort. And in terms of hardware, I don't do too much custom. Like I don't have my knobs made for me. I feel that that lower horn kind of speaks for itself and does a lot of the custom thing for itself. And then there's also just from a sales standpoint, this is what people want. What I mean? This is what the people in my targeted audience they're looking for. If I try to do something,
threshold of how much is too much.
Exactly. That's a good way to put it. Because if I started to really do something custom, then my price goes way up.
Yeah.
And that shies buyers away. And, I'm not trying to do that. I still, even though, again, my guitars could be a little pricier for a lot of people, I don't want them to be so far out of range that like a everyday player still can't really aspire to them. I try my hardest to keep the price reasonable. There are guys that make guitars, like they're great guys, great builders. I'm not naming anybody, but they make a guitar that's far more simple than my work, far less of offerings, and they're $1,000 more than mine, for instance.
No.
I try my hardest to keep my price low because I want players to pick my guitars up. I want to be able to sell these to people who will pick them up and play them. So that's a big thing in my mind whenever I'm laying parts out and designing things.
For sure.
So on the bodies, you said you're CNCing those. How much after the CNC work? I mean, the lines are so elegant on these guitars. I mean, do you have to do a lot of finish up sanding on that, or does it come off the CNC pretty clean?
Yeah, so the necks come off pretty clean because the neck is just a neck. But the bodies come off, and I would say it's probably like 60-40, 65-35. So 65 being CNC, the rest being done by hand. Like I said, about 40% hand, 60%.
Yeah, that's
CNC.
a lot. That's a lot of work.
Yeah, those carves. It's just I could probably sit down and program the CNC to do it. It'd be a lot of work to have it do that, and so I got to get in there with files and rasps and sand palm sander and kind of do a lot of the shaping.
I think I saw a video of you. It might have been shaping a neck, and I believe it was you. Forgive me if it's wrong, but I mean I look at a lot of guitar video, but I remember looking at that and then backing out, and I didn't associate what I was seeing with the finished guitar. And I was like, what the crap? Because it was like it was a rasp, or it was a rasp file. And I was like, how does he get to that from that? That's incredible.
Yeah, it's still a lot of work. There's so many fine little, like, when you look at the full carved versions of my guitars, especially the Virtus model, that upper horn carve, there's a lot of handwork that goes into getting that tucked in kind of shape to it, and making sure it looks right. The lines are very important for me.
Yeah.
I like shape to speak for the guitar rather than everything else. Although as I start to make more and more guitars, people are requesting crazier finishes and, they're starting to kind of go beyond that. I prefer shape to speak for the guitar, so I actually prefer more simple, solid finishes and the silhouette and the lines to really speak.
How about in terms of woods? I mean, it looks like just taking a quick peek at some of the guitars you have posted on there. I mean, you use a pretty wide variety of woods.
Yeah, so I'm not like limited. I don't really limit myself too much. Like one of the things I refuse to do is these days, and I've recently made one for a really good dealer of mine, only because he's a good dealer. Is maple. I don't like to do all maple necks. I hate maple fretboards. And forgetting stability, I just hate finishing them and doing them. And so screw that. It's like one stubborn area where it's like I'm not doing that. It's just a pain in the ass. But when it comes to the bodies, my favorite wood to use is alder, because shaping and sanding and finishing is a pain. Like for my finisher, especially when I do like a softer wood, like a Carina or like black limba, and I bring him it's so hard to prevent those carves from coming out wavy when you sand it. So when you sand the guitars out, wood grain has hard. Like if you look at like a wooden piece of wood, it's got like the dark lines will be harder than the lines in between each bit of the grain.
Yeah.
So as you're sanding it, you're actually sanding away the softer parts a little bit more than the harder parts. Mm-hmm. So when the finisher gets to it and sprays his even coat over it, the finish is going to spray out wavy. So when you look at it in the lights, so you'll see the waviness. So I prefer alder because it's easier to get smooth and it gives you a better finish. And I actually think tonally alder is a very complete wood. It does everything.
I think Yngwie Malmsteen would like that style of guitar. Yeah, you scallop the whole guitar, not just the wood.
Well, yeah, I mean, he plays. He only plays the Strat today.
Yeah.
That's Scallop Strat. Yeah, I mean that's boring. Yeah. But that's different stuff. That's some boring stuff right there. Yeah. So he, it's. But I do use all different kinds of wood. I use all kinds of figured maples and walnut, and I love the sound of mahogany. So I will use mahogany, even though from a building standpoint, I prefer alder. And it's just a whole wide variety. I try not to shy away because ultimately, if some customer approaches me and goes, "Oh, I want this wood," am I going to say no to an order because I don't want to cut that wood? Like that's just a stupid approach to business. So, it's slim pickings when it comes to sales for guys like me sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's a tough, very competitive business. So you can't be turning people away because of stubbornness.
How much, when you are getting those orders, is there anything where people come to you with like, this is a piece of wood from an old an old Yankees dugout bench or something, like where just like, or this is off of my grandpa's boat or something? Do you ever get anything like that?
I've actually I think I've only done one project. I don't actually remember which guitar looking at my albums, but I know I had a guy send me a piece of wood for his neck. And it was a simple piece of maple that he's had, and it was a such scenario exactly like you said. It came out of the guy's grandfather was like a cabinet maker and had the maple in his shop, and he had passed away, and he was waiting to have a custom guitar made. And it was a plain old piece of quarter sawn maple, and I was like, okay, I can shape that and use it.
Yeah.
And that was just for the shaft of the neck. I do make. The only traditional guitar I make is the Chelsea Telecasters, which if you go on my website, having worked in the Chelsea Hotel in New York, they were renovating it while I was there. So over the years, we were taking all the old pine out of the building that they were just throwing in the dumpsters. And it's great wood. It sounds like glass. It's and I don't say that in a bad way. It just chimes very loudly when you tap it. So I make Telecasters out of that. That's really in terms of this old wood coming to me. I haven't had people really bring me too many crazy things, but I've built with crazy woods.
Yeah.
So I would like to back up to the parts. I see that you use McNelly pickups on a lot of your builds, and I like him because what's unique about him is he does a lot of his work as far as parts and tooling himself on his laser, and that kind of, to me, he's kind of separated from a lot of other pickup builders.
Yes.
And we were on Facebook in a pickup winders group all conversating, and the beginners like to ask, where's all the parts? Where's all the covers and everything? And he got on there and he put, man, I just make all my own.
Yeah. Tim I met on the internet long time ago. I can't even recall the day. And he, you go back to my earliest builds and he's been making me my pickups. And he is great because of the custom options. It gives me design, forget just good tone, gives me design flexibility. If you look at a lot of my work, the ones with the McNellys, like I've made one for last year's NAMM show, and the guitar had these beautiful wide rosewood covers that matched the fretboard really nicely. Yeah. And it's this cover design that we came up with for other people have done similar stuff, but I specifically have him make that for me. It's just like very square. It's just very rectangular, flat shape. You don't really see the pole pieces on the one side of the pickup. And when he does the wood grain there, it's beautiful. So it gives me so much flexibility to really separate my guitars. I like to try and do that with my guitar pickups and separate the look and do something really different and unique. I had that again on full display at last year's NAMM show. If you were to go back and look at those guitars, like some of the winding, like I had Tim make a set of pickups and he wrapped the pickup in this blue twine to match the blue pinstriping on the guitar.
Yeah.
And it's like little details like that really, really step a guitar's thought up in people's minds. I just feel like a lot of guitar builders don't think like that. A lot of guitar makers are very nuts and bolts kind of guys. And again, nothing wrong with that. Leo Fender was a nuts and bolt kind of guy, and look what he came up with. So, but
like rims on a car, man.
Yeah. To separate myself, again, it's such a competitive business. I having a guy like Tim in the holster is a wonderful tool.
So when somebody orders a guitar, do you give the customer a choice to pick among a list of builders for pickups?
Yes. So typically,
what's that list look like?
So I don't, I'll work with anybody. If some guy's like, oh, I got to put these pickups in my guitar, I'm not saying no. Like it's cut for a humbucker. Most humbuckers will fit in it. You know what I mean? Like I'm not turning people away, just like the wood for a pickup. But when people go, oh, what should I use? I suggest to them Tim at McNelly Pickups. I suggest them bare knuckle pickups. I suggest to them a guy that I've been friends with for a while. His name is Adam. His pickup company is Elysian Pickups, more of a heavy rock metal pickups, like very technical stuff.
Is he now in near Akron, Ohio? Adam Bath?
Yeah, Adam Bath, yeah.
Yeah, he's good people. Yep,
Adam is a great, just like Tim, an incredible guy, great, kind person. And he, like Tim, does, and he's working on a set for me for a guitar, a very special guitar for this year's NAMM show. Nice. Wait till you see this guitar. It's so cool. It's inspired by the spacesuit that Neil Armstrong wore to the moon.
Oh boy!
So
I can't wait to see that. We'll be there, and we'll
you'll
definitely
have to
hook up with you.
And tell Adam I said hi if you don't.
Sure. Yeah. I have to
I
actually have to speak with him tomorrow. So about that set of pickups. So, but so I suggest those three guys as the mainstays, and then of course I have Seymour Duncan and DiMarzio on the list also as the big companies that I offer. Now that covers a huge range in the pickup world, so I don't go further than that with listing on my website. But at the end of the day, I've used pickups from all different kinds of guys. Nick Silver pickups. Radio Shop or Pickups, I think is what it's called. I have one client, every time I make him a guitar, I'm forgetting the name of the company. He sends me these pickups from this guy that hand makes them in Japan. I'm forgetting the name of the company though.
Interesting.
There's just so many winders out there today. It's incredible. And for me, one of the big things that turns me on to pickup makers is if they do custom stuff like what Tim does and what Adam does for me, like special covers and winding and wrappings, because again, from a design standpoint, I try to separate my guitars on many levels. So that's one area where I try to be a strong suit with.
So
awesome.
Moving forward, is there anything that you, as you've been developing these guitars, is there anything that you're saying like, I have this thing that I'm working on, I feel like I could make a change or make this improve on this, or have you hit any of those things where you've encountered that?
Yeah, so one of the big areas that I wish that I could do a change in my design is on the Virtus model. That guitar, stupid me, making my life harder with all this design stuff. Oh God, I beat myself up over this every day. That guitar does not fit in like 90% of guitar cases.
and that's
When I designed
a
the
wider
Virtus,
body, right?
yeah, it's a wider body, and not by much. We're talking like an inch, not even.
Yeah.
That upper horn, it just does not fit in so many cases. So people, before I started making guitars, I hated hard shell cases for guitars. I think they're worthless. And not that I don't think they have their point. Like if you're shipping guitars, I get it. But who wants a hard shell case? You get a guitar, you stick it under your bed, it collects dust, the guitar's on the stand. So like I have always said, there's so many great like semi-hard case makers out there today, like semi-hard gig bags like Mono and Gator makes them and TKL. That's what I'm going to offer with my guitars, and they're very high end, and that's something that people will want. You could actually still travel with the guitar.
Right.
Luckily, the Virtus fits in those. It's a bit of a squeeze sometimes, depending on the brand, but it's
just cut a little hole in it. It'll be fine.
Yeah, and that's one area where I'm like, man, I wish I could change the design of my guitar, and those are really the only areas where I've felt from a design standpoint, like, hey, this is what I can change. Because I'm smitten with my designs. I'm very happy with them. And
you got 5 bolts in the neck. That thing's not snapping off.
Exactly. So it's the Virtus has 4, but the 4 is there because it's a greater access. You get it. Yeah. You get it. Believe it or not, you feel that difference in there. I like to think of the Mirus as, while some would refer to it as like my Telly style, I actually refer to it also as like my Les Paul style, because let's face it, the Les Paul is not an ergonomic guitar in the slightest. And when you try to get up to those last few frets on the Les Paul, it's like a chore. So the Mirus is like a much more streamlined Les Paul where, you have to still get your thumb up on a part of the body to get in there. It's more, I like to feel of like my power chording guitar, while the Virtus is my like aggressive shredder style. Although people buy each model and do whatever they want, so it's not really set in stone.
All right. So I have a modern Les Paul where it's called an Access, and it's very easy to get up to those frets. So there are answers, but Gibson's more of a traditional guitar.
Yeah. I mean, well, look, Les Paul wasn't thinking about this. Back in the day.
They played chords back then,
Exactly. Les Paul was playing that old band style music they needed that projection. So, he was going off, it was very traditional. So it's not a knock on the guy or the guitar. But, Gibson's problem is, and it's not so much a problem, is that the people that buy Gibsons want what they were. They don't want what they can be.
Oh, man, do they ever. Of course.
Yeah, and Gibson they face the brunt end of this world. Thank God I don't have to deal with that. I get told to kill myself, but Gibson deals with worse. So it's like, people want a Les Paul. They don't want too much of a change. I'm looking at a picture of the Access now. I've seen Les Pauls like that. I personally would want that on my Les Paul. That's an upgrade to the Les Paul. But most people want that traditional. And I really learned that at Chelsea Guitars, which is a vintage guitar store. The slightest changes people don't want. And
right.
It's really,
there's sacred cows too. That's the other problem, is that, when you buy something like that, you are also saying, I'm gonna get my money out of this someday. So right. You don't want to mess with it, because then right. it's not, you don't have the value.
Well, I think the big thing is also a lot of the people playing Les Pauls, their heroes are playing Les Pauls. Or a lot of people playing, say, a Stratocaster, their heroes are playing Strats. Yeah. So they want that guitar. Like your Les Paul Access, Jared, for instance. You know how many more people would pick that guitar up if Jimmy Page only played those? But he doesn't. And that's the problem. Gibson and Fender are very much so connected to the heroes.
Yeah.
So that's tough from their end, designing things.
Yeah.
I'm hats off to the design teams.
It's hard to break out of that.
It's a really good mold to be in, because like you're legendary, but it's a bad mold, because if you ever want to do anything different, it's hard.
Now, moving forward, you mentioned you have a special guitar that you're working on for NAMM.
Yes.
Any other cool things that you have on the bench that are maybe super unique that you don't have to tell all about it, but if there's anything you can tell us about it, that'd be really cool.
So I am working on 4 guitars for the NAMM show, and obviously for the NAMM show, you want to spice up the guitars and really make them showstoppers. So
Says the guy who's making the spiced up showstoppers
yeah,
on a daily basis.
To sit down and to go, okay, how can I really elevate these is fun to me. That's why I do this.
That's awesome.
So I have the NASA Apollo 11 kind of guitar, which is going to be this crazy metallic white with all these little details that kind of show like design elements of the spacesuit specifically. Like parts are anodized blue and red, and you'll see it. It's all going to make sense when you see the guitar. It's very difficult to explain otherwise. And then I'm making one guitar. I have a local gunsmith who does a finishing process called Cerakote. And I don't know if you guys know what Cerakote is. I believe it's a ceramic base finish. Very tough stuff. And they'll finish things like rifles and handguns with it.
Okay.
And often are not used for artwork. And I went into his store the other day because I was just walking past it and I was just glancing in. And I'm not a gun nut, so I'm not trying to bring any of that up. But I looked in the window and I saw he had a bunch of the firearms that he had done the Cerakote finishes on, like really artistic stuff. Like one of them was like really Miami Vice inspired. And I was like, oh, you know what? I wonder if he could do guitar parts. So I walked in and I asked him, and he can. I actually just dropped the parts off a few hours ago before the podcast. And so this guitar that I'm making is going to be this great teal color, and the parts are going to be this electric kind of green.
Wow.
Yeah, it's going to be really something special, that one. Just not inspired by anything, but just cool color design and mix. You'll see it. That'll be popular. That's going to be a 7-string guitar. What the hell else am I making? I'm forgetting off the top.
Is that is it electro? It's not electro, like
it's sprayed on and then it's like baked, I believe.
Okay, it's okay. All right.
Yeah. It's I think it's baked. I mean, it's a lot like powder coating, but just a lot more durable and finer. But yeah, it's going to be super, super unique.
That's neat.
Yeah, and then I have one. I'm doing in this Porsche yellow. It's a Porsche color that they call racing yellow. And I have a special set, which I haven't shown off yet. I'm holding it in my hand right now, actually, of DiMarzio pickups. And it's the 50th anniversary of the Super Distortion over at DiMarzio. So they're actually coming back to the NAMM show this year. And they're like faux carbon fiber topped with like a yellow wrap around them. They're probably the most unique set of DiMarzios on the planet in terms of like look. I've never seen them really make anything like this. And that's going to be a really cool guitar with like actual carbon fiber parts. And, again, long story long, like all these guitars that I'm bringing are going to have some really great little details, very tasteful. And this is what I like to do in my lutherie. Like there's only so much I could show off with my fretwork and how I make my nut and how the guitars sound and play. Of course, those are the most important aspects.
Yeah.
But to me, the fun is in the design.
Aesthetic, yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
It's the fun. That's at least for the player and for guys like you see them. The fun is in that it's a guitar and it's the whole package. But for me, in the shop day to day, I see the wood every day. I see the frets every day. So the fun is seeing the design come together, and even more so when a client comes to me with a dream that they want to apply to the guitar, whether it's inspired by their house or a car or whatever they want to have an inspiration from. The fun for me is getting that together and getting it to people and trying to bring their design to life in ways that haven't really been done or haven't been done too much.
Yeah, the last thing I want to comment on before we're going to be rounding third here and heading home to our Would You Rather segment.
Sure.
And Tony might roll his eyeballs at this, but back in my youth, back in the day, I worked for a couple of years at a vintage Porsche restoration shop.
Oh, yes.
Oh.
And we had all kinds of vintage racing cars, and I mean it was wonderful.
Heaven, yeah.
I mean it was incredible. And we had loads of speedsters and stuff like that. And one of the things that I truly fell in love with it and had just so much admiration for in these designs. And like yourself, I went to art and design school, and when you see things out in the world, there are things that click with people with the mentality of ourselves that don't with everybody else, maybe necessarily.
Right.
Not for better or for worse, just for different.
Right.
And one of the things that I started to realize was in the simplicity of those early designs, there was so much incredible thought that went into the design.
Oh, yeah.
Just as far as like,
especially the 911.
The deck. Well, I mean, I'm even going to go back to the 356.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
356, for whatever reason, the rear deck lid. I know this is like a really particular thing. It curves in such a way that there's just enough curve on it to where it isn't a silly square thing like a lot of the mid 70s American cars were. And no imagination there is what So there were all these lines that they didn't have to do that probably complicated the crap out of making them.
Yeah, especially then.
But they did them because they're like, no, but this is the right thing to do, and it gave those cars a personality that a lot of people can't put their finger on.
Well, like in the day, and I don't mean to cut you off, like that's what separated like Italian design. Was they were willing to do curves while everyone else was doing like straight lines and hard edges. And curves are sexy.
Yeah.
And for them, it didn't matter how hard it was. This is design.
Yeah.
This is like the spice of life. Like the guys at Ferrari back in the day wouldn't have done it if they couldn't make an amazing engine and make a sexy design on their car. They would have they would be building tractors. They wouldn't care. You know what I mean? Like it was, and that's just like the Porsche and the 911. Like the 911 is probably the most iconic piece of one of the most iconic pieces of design ever. Yeah. And that line, even from back in the day to the latest one, the line is so similar and it just works so well and evokes such thoughts and through sheer simplicity of design too.
Yeah.
There's nothing complex about the design. It's just perfect design.
Yeah. They didn't follow, when we were talking about like some of the body panels and stuff. And I'm equating this to a lot of the things that I see on your guitar. Okay.
Thank you.
In most cases, you have a quarter panel. Well, naturally, you'd cut that right. That's where it would end. And they said, no, we're not going to end it right there. It'll interrupt the line of the car. It'll interrupt the curve of this panel.
Right.
And they thought completely differently than everybody else, and that's one of the reasons they're so successful. But honestly, when I first saw your designs, those days in that shop came to mind, and so there you go.
That's very kind of you. That's cool, and that's like what keeps me going. Like it made you think of something nice. It made you think of something cool. Maybe a time in your life that you really, really appreciated and you talk about all the time, and I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
And that's what I want my guitars to do, and that's what when I was designing them, I wanted my guitars to do that, because if they weren't doing that, I'd be in financial. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like,
yeah,
that's the spice of everything to it, and it keeps me going. It really does. That's
awesome.
From when I was a young kid, like you said, maybe people who went to art school and had that specific mindset, maybe we all think differently. But even if I could meet one person a day and just teach them that thought or tell them that way of thinking that we just discussed, that could change the world. So it's a very powerful thing. That feeling that you have and that thought process that you had that's what it is to basically be human.
There you go. Indeed. Well, we are going to fire up the old El Camino right now. And Jared's going to grab the keys. Jared, where are we going?
Well, you're going to come on down to Nashville, and we're going to go on my new deck I made this past summer.
Will you have some? Will you have some of them the Gibson hors d'oeuvres?
Yeah, absolutely.
No aluminum foil.
I'll make sure they're not as modern though. Oh. All right. we're going to play a little game of Would You Rather?
Whoa. Very
Ladies and
nice.
gentlemen, our good old buddy Bruce Bacon, he always brings the bacon
Double
with
B.
the Would You Rathers every single time.
Yes.
And good old Bruce. So this is a Would You Rather called I'm So Vain. You are at an open mic night and a friend of a friend singer, songwriter is going to perform one song. He comes up to you and explains that he hurt his wrist pretty bad and wondered if you could play his guitar while he sings. It's only one song with 4 chords, so you can pull it off. But once you see his guitar, you realize that it's not the only thing you need to pull off. His James Bay Epiphone 1966 Century is adorned with a clip-on headstock tuner, okay, neon orange strings, hubba, and a white pick holder mounted on the front of the guitar.
Oof.
As much as you want to help, you don't want to be seen with all these doodads, right? So you tell him, sure, I will do it, but... No, I'm sorry. Sure, I will do it. Sure, I'll do it.
Sounded like you had a little stroke there,
Not
Jared.
working.
The Camino's breaking down here.
Yeah.
Sure, I'll do it, but I have to take 2 of these things off. Luckily, he has pliers and a Diodario NYXL's 9s in his gig bag. A very good string. What 2 items would you rather take off? The clip-on headstock tuner, the neon orange strings, the the white pick holder mounted on the front of the guitar. So one of those like triangular.
So you got to take 2 of them off,
plasticky-
but you're going to be stuck
Yeah.
with one of them.
Yep, you have to have one on the guitar.
Okay. Interesting. That is an interesting one.
He snuck a 3-choicer in here.
Yeah. Well, it's a 2-choicer out of 3. So it's still
I'm keeping the tuner.
okay.
Keeping the tuner. Those strings, those coated strings sound terrible, so I don't want those.
There you go.
I'm sorry, they're just the worst. Whenever I had to install those on guitars, I would vomit. But
Coated strings?
hey, yeah, can you kill my guitar? Sure, put these on. Yeah, I would get rid of the coated strings, and I don't need that pick holder. So, I think the tuner's fine. Tuner,
There you go.
you gotta be in tune. So.
It seems like on your guitars you would have one of those like just a quick thumb slide, like it would be like a slot that nobody could see, but in the back it would be like spring packed with like a bunch of picks, just like that, except it would be in your guitar.
Hey, well, that's a thought.
There you go.
At least it's not
like that
showing.
idea.
No neon strings, though. As long as
Yeah,
there's no
no.
neon strings, that's the key of all of this.
Yes. Tony, how about yourself?
I'm in the same camp. I mean, to me, those neon strings, coated strings, are just nothing but a gimmick. I don't like the way they look. I've played a couple of guitars that have had them on, and I don't like them.
Yes.
Pick holder. That's what gaffer's tape is for on the mic stand.
Right.
So yeah, I'll keep the tuner.
You
Okay.
got pockets.
Got it. Let's see, Jared.
Oh man, I have to say tuner because it's the obvious one. It's the most necessary function if you're tone deaf.
What if the strings were neon purple?
Still get rid of them.
Oh man,
Well, wait. What color is the guitar?
Well, it's a 66 Epi Century. And I
yeah,
thought,
what would that be, Blonsky?
typically they're sunburst.
Okay, never mind. We're getting rid of the strings.
Oh yeah.
If it was like black, it's like, okay, maybe now, but like no, it's not.
Yeah. We'll do the tuner, and I have the same leather pouch my dad got me 100 years ago for picks anyway that I hang on the stand, so I'm good with the pick thing. So
Well,
yep. What about you, old chill?
as much as I just want to throw a wrench in the works, yeah, there's no way I could have neon strings on there at all. But I really can't take those tuners either. So I'll leave the pick holder on.
Really?
Yeah, why not?
Ugh.
I just the headstock tuners while you're playing. I can't do it. Can't do it.
Why not?
It's just one song, Todd.
Yeah,
It's just one song.
It's a thing. I don't have.
Let's talk.
I used to
into
play.
the string.
Okay, one of the guys that used to play that I used to play with would leave his tuner on the whole time, and it would just drag. It drove me nuts because we were playing.
Really, that surprises me because little things never seem to get under your skin.
Yeah. And also, so I had a Clash tribute band for many years. He was playing mix part on a Strat with a tuner, a headstock tuner. It killed me. I'm like, what are you doing? You're killing this.
Hey, you could get away with
No,
that.
couldn't get away with any
Strats
of
are
it.
great
They're
guitars.
so small
no.
today, the clip-on tuners. Like I got this new D'Addario one, and it's like tiny.
I'm
It's
thinking
like,
it's a snark.
oh,
That's I'm gonna
snark.
say it's a red snark.
A red
see.
snark.
Yeah.
That lights
Yeah,
out.
because I know what you're talking about. I have a little tiny. I mean, it's as big as a small, like an eraser, like a school eraser.
yeah.
maybe
If you
even
clip
smaller.
it reverse on, on the back, like, you don't even see it.
Yes, but he had a snark and a Strat. No.
Yeah.
It killed me.
That's a bad one.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's what I'm doing.
All right. Sounds unanimous. No, you did the pick.
Yes.
Yeah,
It
sorry.
wasn't totally unanimous.
It was 75% unanimous.
Yes.
The hipster of the bunch. Hipster of the bunch.
Yeah, Bruce, thank you so much for sending that Would You Rather in. And if you listeners out there have some fun ideas as you're driving along, please send them in.
Yes.
We'll read them. We'll do a thing. We'll have some fun.
We'll do our best to read them.
I'll try to read it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tony, we need to thank a few people before we let our friend the Dean go.
You are correct, Todd, because at this point of the show, there's a special group of people that we love to thank. These are our executive producers. Now, an executive producer makes this show possible. How do you become one? Easy. Easy as pie. Head over to patreon.com/the Guitar Knobs. Check out a couple different levels in which you can participate, become a sponsor, a patron, a friend, a hero of the Guitar Knobs podcast.
Indeed.
Each level comes with some very nice thank you gifts and, opportunities to win stuff.
Lots of giveaways.
Heck yeah. Lots of giveaways coming up.
I got one lined up right for the very first of the year.
Oh, I love
Might
that.
even do it on literally the first day of the year. I'm going to try to do it on the first
Can
day
we
of the
do
year.
it at midnight on New Year's?
No, I'm not going to do that.
Oh, you get all that stuff. But as an executive producer, there's one thing more. Jared,
Get to have your name read on the thing.
your name read on the thing, and that's what I'm going to do right now. So special thanks to these executive producers, Vader and Petters.
Yes.
Vader and Pedals. John Halverson, Rick Calhoun, Trevor Gunberg, Elad Mizrahi, Micah D, Richard Kendall, James White, Motander Guitars, Anthony Gemolero, Bill Gola Guitars, John Esterly from Rare Buzz Effects, Anthony Lathrop, Stefan Lem, Michael Senchuk, Ken Sayers, Doug Christ, Darren Gregory, Tom Brazen, Rusty Sneeden, Ralph Gottschalk. I'm just having a hard time tonight, Todd. Must be the circus peanuts.
Sounds like your brain is double oaked.
I think it's.
You got what I had.
I think it's the circus peanuts. I had too many circus peanuts earlier. Sorry, Ralph. Ralph Gottschalk from Wonderful Audio Technology. What? Don Kloss, Gregory Randall, Brett Hogarth, Eric Hemmer, Stuart George, Michael Furman, James Bell, James Romer, Cameron Pampas, David Tyndall, Trevor Ellenberg, Christopher Logan, and new executive producer, John Sebastian. Welcome aboard, John.
This is very, very exciting stuff.
Yes, it is. But Todd, there's one other special group of executive producers. We call them our grand poobahs. Mm-hmm. These fine folks live in the penthouse suite, drinking orange liquid of some unknown origin. It's very nice, I'm told. I've never been to the Penthouse. And they also must wear a fez upon their heads whilst listening to the podcast.
And at the same time.
That is correct. So special thanks to these grand poobahs. Tommy Manasco, Ricardo Igareda, David Kaminga, Brandon Wow Pickups, Hex Matos, Michio Murakishi, Bob Crouch, Jack Cadian, Sam Jett, Tyler K.C. Rhines, LSJ Music Company, John Williams, James Pennington, Steve Keys, Cody Foster, Science of Sound, Brian Robison, Jonathan Jerusik from 12th Hour Devices, Corey Nigro, Michael Van Zant, Tim Nowak, Jonathan Daly, Martin Cliff, Sean S.
Yes.
David Poe, Billy Spitfire Unlimited, Congregation Gear Demos, Paul Von Eppinger, Scott Sullivan, Great Lakes Guitar Pickups, Matt Hart, Enrico Fernando, Moon Guitars, Adam Johnson, and Eric Edwards. Thank you.
Indeed. Keeping the show going. We really, truly appreciate it. Thank you so much, everyone. And if you're on the fence about jumping in to that pool of awesomeness, just do it.
Yeah.
It'll help us out.
Don't even think about it.
We will thank you for it every week.
Yes, we will.
All right. Let's see here. Dean,
Yes, sir.
where can people find the things that you are making? And how can they get one of your amazing guitars?
Well, the best way, of course, is to order direct. Sorry to my wonderful dealers out there, but the direct orders are always the best. You can visit my website, deangordonguitars.com. I have my shop, which right now is out of stock because I'm sold out of everything, which is good for me. But then I have my order form, and you could put together a nice guitar there, and I send you a quote. I also have a few other wonderful dealers. I have South Shore Guitar Boutique on Long Island in New York. I have Axe Palace in Massachusetts. I have Destroyal Guitars, although he only sells the Chelsea Telecasters. And then I have Apollon Music in Japan.
Awesome.
Nice.
Out of curiosity, what is a typical turnaround on one of your custom orders?
My custom orders right now, and of course it bounces around, but if you ordered right now, it would be 5.5 to 7.5 months.
Got it.
Right now, a big portion of the delay is I have the next month basically focused on the NAMM guitars.
Yes.
Otherwise, it usually hovers around 4 to 6 months.
Okay.
So it's actually, from what I know, it's a while, but it is a very reasonable time considering what I've heard from other guitar makers making a similar amount of guitars. Some guys make you wait 1.5 years, 2 years.
That's crazy. Not you.
I can't do that to people because, I mean, like, anything can happen in 2 years. You can decide you hate guitar in a year. You know what I mean? Like, that's too long to wait. So
Yeah.
I'd hire someone before I let my waiting list get that long.
I like that. Dedication, commitment.
Yeah.
I like it. Tony, how about yourself?
Yeah, head over to pickguardian.com. Check out some of the wonderful, fancy things that I do with plastic. Make your guitar even more yours. Pickguardian.com.
I like it.
Member FDIC.
I'm going to make one of my other new ones, maybe even more.
Oh, really?
Right, yeah. So
Well,
we'll
no.
see.
Man, I gotta come up with something like that. I didn't sound nearly as good and eloquent.
Tony does it all the time.
It's all the. It's in the
Dean Gordon
bourbon.
Guitars. Just do it. You know.
There you go.
Do
so
it.
close.
Do it or
Episode
die.
Yeah.
Jared, about yourself.
You want to reach out to me, jared.allen.brandon, Instagram.
Perfect.
Chat about whatever you want.
You can shoot me an email, Todd at theguitarknobs.com. You can also DM me on Instagram at guitarknobs. We'd love to hear from you. Tell us what's up in your guitar world, what you are playing, what you like about the show, maybe even what you don't like about the show.
I don't like Todd.
Well, I get a lot of that. Anyways, hope to hear from you. And please, as you're traveling around in this new year,
Yes.
listen to the Valentinos
Yo.
for some great driving music.
You know,
Okay?
you can even download it onto that
You can
listening
download
device.
it. Yes.
Free of charge, I'm
It's
told.
all free. Everything I do
and
is
listen
free.
to it. And Todd,
I'm a bad
it
businessman.
warms the cockles of Todd's heart to hear that people are listening
It does.
to the Villain.
We're getting all kinds of traction in Australia for some reason. I know it's weird. It's like we're getting picked up on all kinds of things.
You
down
call
there.
that a knife?
Yeah. Anyways, all right. Low hanging fruit, Tony. That's too long for a T-shirt. Thank you to Dean for coming on the show. We really love talking with you, man, and we're so glad you're out there doing something special.
Yeah, definitely.
Get up.
Thank you guys for having me on. It means a lot. You know, it's I know it's a big guitar world out there, so it's always special to speak about my work. And I hope to see you guys down at the NAMM show. And,
we'll definitely look you up.
I'll have some really great stuff there. But Jamie also runs a wonderful boutique guitar showcase, so I'm sure there's going to be some other very special stuff there as well.
Perfect.
Cool.
All right, man. Hey, everybody out there, have a fantastic guitar week, and subscribe.
Yeah.
Jared.
Test.
I like to argue with myself and talk to myself every now and again, but you know, I always win those arguments.
How's it going?
Hanging in there.
We just went through that, Tony. Weren't you paying attention?
No, I was sleeping.
My brother Jared is actually he's a professional fighter in the UFC. So I don't know.
Really?
How
What's
that stacks
his
up.
last name?
Gordon, Jared Gordon.
Oh. Why did I ask that?
You assume everyone has a stage name like you, Todd.
I know. I picked a great stage name, Todd. Ugh.
I'm high on circus peanuts.
Yeah, I brought him a bag of circus peanuts.
We're from New York, so that was the hometown victory.
That's
we've been
weird. I
waiting
was
this-
detecting a very thick Texan accent.
Yeah, you hear that?
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
I'm a little confused. I'll be honest with you. You're talking about the
So is
lower
he,
horn.
Dean. And Jared, if you do your, if you wouldn't mind muting while you're doing your computer work, it is super loud over here. Just so you know.
I am not.
Oh, sorry, that was me clicking just now.
Oh, okay, no problem. You're fine.
Yeah, you keep doing it.
You keep doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's from New York. I think he can handle it.
Yeah.
What else is going on? Nothing. We got all kinds of stuff going on. Is what I really meant to say.
I
heard
say that
worse.
at the pickup shop, and I'm like, "Hey, get back to work." All the time like this. Get back to work.
From his time when he was on the Newsies.
Let's roll.
Yes. And away we go.
Well, that's it for these knobs. Please visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/theguitarknobs. Visit our website at theguitarknobs.com for all of our past episodes, 4 on the Floor blog, and other good stuff. You can connect with us on social too at our Facebook page and share your gear and stories on our Facebook group. Also, be sure to check out our Instagram at Guitar Knobs. Catch you next time.